So it's been a couple of weeks now since I built the ultimate high-end budget monster, and that's given me some time to sit down and throw all my games at it and really thrash it as much as I could and see what it could handle. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can go back and watch my previous video where I built the ultimate $2,500 gaming system. That's the best system you can build for $2,500. But in summary, I built it to compete with my $4,000 system, which I built at the beginning of the year and is sitting right next to me here. So I've come back today to show you some results. I've got gaming benchmarks and 3D Mark scores, and I think you're going to be surprised how it competes with my $4,000 flagship RTX 4080 system. Going into this, it's important to understand that this is not a direct comparison between a 7900 XTX and an RTX 4080 because the two cards are running in two different systems. Rather, it's just a comparison to show what kind of system can you build for $2,500 versus $4,000, where the main differences are really a little bit better spec'd hardware, maybe more premium brand, and also the aesthetics are really different. My $4,000 system has a Height Y60 case. It has, high-end RGB Corsair fans, and I'd really spared no expense when I was building it. Whereas the $2,500 system was really built on a tight budget to see how close could I get to the same level of performance if I don't care so much about getting the most premium quality and aesthetic parts. For reference, here's a list of the parts used in each system, and you can see the hardware is very similar, but I cut corners on the budget system, which made sense to preference performance. If you want to see the current hardware listings on PC Part Picker, I'll leave a link for each of these systems in the description of this video, so you can go and check them out yourself. So let's jump into some benchmark results and see how much damage a $2,500 system can do to a $4,000 system. So starting off with 3D Mark's Firestrike Ultra. This is an older test, it's a DX11 test, but this is the one which does run at 4K. And I like running this test because I've been running it for so many years now that I can compare it to really old hardware I used to have. In this particular test, you can see the budget system absolutely destroyed my Extreme PC with a score of 19,360 compared to the Extreme more expensive PC's 16,188. I was really surprised to see this, but I was also happy at the time that my new system I've built is able to compete so closely with a more expensive system. The next 3D Mark test I ran is Time Spy, and this is a DirectX 12 test at 1440p. Here you can see the RTX 4080 Extreme PC catching up with the budget PC, but still not able to beat it, though it was close within the margin of about 1,000 points. This is still a really good score for both systems. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is a really old game by now. It was released in 2016, but it still actually manages to hammer modern day graphics cards. In fact, if you run this game at the absolute maximum settings, you will get below 30 FPS on an RTX 4080. And mostly that's because MSAA on this game really hammers GPUs even to this day. And yeah, like I said, even an RTX 4080 can't get to an average above 30 FPS when you have MSAA turned to 16. Anyway, I ran this test at 1440p in DirectX 11 mode with the maximum settings, except with MSAA turned off completely. Here you can see the score is really close, but the Extreme PC did manage to edge out the XTX budget PC just by a little bit. You could put this down to margin of error or the airflow in the different cases. It's really close. I would actually even call it a tie. We're moving into the ray tracing tests now, and this is where the RTX Extreme PC really pulls ahead, and you can see where the benefits are of using NVIDIA graphics cards. The XTX budget PC just didn't have a chance of keeping up with the 4080 Extreme PC in this case. And I don't know if that's just down to the raw performance and RTX or ray tracing capabilities of the NVIDIA cards, or maybe AMD haven't maintained their drivers for this particular test. The budget PC scored a 50, whereas the Extreme PC got around 35 points more. The next ray tracing test we have is 3D Mark Port Royale, and this is 3D Mark's kind of flagship ray tracing test. It is actually a 4K test, so 4K ray tracing, no upscaling, and it was actually surprisingly close. I was surprised compared to the DX12 ray tracing test, how close this score was. So the budget PC is sitting around 15,500 points, whereas the RTX Extreme PC is sitting closer to 18,000, which is around a 15% increase from the budget PC. Still, it's not that much compared to what I was expecting. That's really close, and I'm really pleased with that result from the budget PC actually. As a side note, 3D Mark gave a really comical estimate on what kind of FPS I would get in Battlefield 5 based off these test results for the budget system. I don't know how 3D Mark calculates this, but pretty sure it's wrong. Next up, we have another ray tracing test, and this is Boundary. Boundary is a game that released kind of recently, but the demo slash benchmark for it came out about a couple of years ago, I'd say. It's really interesting. It's really visually really a nice benchmark. It's a kind of space arena shooter. I ran this benchmark at 1440p with no upscaling and with ray tracing turned on. And the RTX Extreme PC scored an average FPS of 73.4, whereas the XTX budget PC scored an average FPS of around 50. A funny quirk of this benchmark is even if you have a Radeon card, it actually offers to turn on DLSS still. And I don't know why that is. I guess they didn't really build the benchmark considering Radeon cards. But yeah, I guess if you have DLSS turned on and you're using a Radeon card, it kind of just doesn't do anything, I suppose. Okay, and finally, really putting these cards to pace with Cyberpunk 2077. This first one is with the Ray Traced Ultra preset at 1440p, again with no upscaling technology, so it's raw 1440p on the maximum settings, without using the overdrive mode. The XTX budget PC got an average FPS of 41.16 in the benchmark, whereas the 4080 Extreme PC had an average FPS of 56.38. So actually closer than I was expecting. Again, I think AMD are making really good strides over each generation to improving their ray tracing performance. But obviously they are struggling a bit to catch up with NVIDIA, although they are doing it gradually. So fingers crossed for next generation AMD ray tracing. And finally, the most extreme test that I ran is the Cyberpunk 2077 Overdrive Path Traced preset at 1440p with no upscaling. And not surprisingly, this absolutely destroyed both systems, but particularly the XTX budget PC, which only got an average FPS of 9.88. Below 10. That's a single digit number. The RTX 4080 Extreme PC was close to an average of 30 FPS, but not quite there, and dropped as low as 20 FPS. So in both situations, this is not playable, and it is not how you would play the game. But again, it does draw a comparison between the performance of each system. So in summary, when it comes to performance, the budget XTX PC is able to outclass the high-end premium 4080 PC when it comes to pure raster performance of video games without ray tracing. But as soon as you play games with the ray tracing turned on, that's where the premium RTX 4080 system immediately outclasses the budget system, although in some cases it's still kind of close, but consistently the 4080 system was in the lead with ray tracing. Performance isn't the only thing to consider though. You also can look at both systems and it's pretty clear which one looks nicer. So if you care about aesthetics and you want something to look nice in your living room, perhaps you want to spend more money for that reason. The budget system is a bit more noisy, It doesn't have any AIOs, whereas my Extreme system does. So the budget system's fans do get quite noisy. I think particularly the stock CPU cooler that came with the AMD CPU in the budget system is quite loud, even though it's called the Stealth Wraith. And also the Radeon card in the budget system does have a bit of coil whine. That might vary from card to card depending how it comes off the manufacturing line. But I have heard reports of coil whine in Radeon cards, in particularly the 7900 XTX from other people. So it is something that you might have to expect, unfortunately. It's not that loud, I don't really notice it when I'm gaming and I've got the speakers turned on. But if you're sitting right next to your computer, you might notice it when you boot up a game. If you've got your headphones on or your speakers, it's really not that noticeable. So what am I going to be doing with the $2,500 budget monster? Well, it's going to sit in my media center room where I've got it hooked up to my TV with an Xbox controller. And recently I've just been enjoying some Diablo 4. It runs consistently at 120 FPS with HDR turned on and looks really amazing. It's fantastic. I've been really happy with the performance of this system. And if you are going to build a gaming system for really high-end performance at $2,500 Australian budget, it is still what I recommend. It's only really if you want something that looks a lot nicer and maybe performs better in ray tracing that I would consider the more expensive end PC. In my next video, I'm going to upgrade my budget system's CPU cooler from the stock supplied Stealth Wraith from AMD and install a budget AIO water cooler and answer once and for all whether the Stealth Wraith stock supplied CPU cooler is really garbage. Hope to see you then.